Welcome back to the Stonewood Funding podcast, where we bring you real stories, real solutions, and real financial relief for those navigating lawsuits. I'm Laura Lee, and today's episode is all about real-life experiences of plaintiffs who faced financial hardships while waiting for their settlement, and how pre-settlement funding changed everything for them. We know lawsuits take time. A fair settlement can take months or even years to finalize. Meanwhile, bills don't stop. Rent, groceries, medical expenses, car payments, it all keeps coming, even when your income doesn't. Today, we're going to share 4 incredible stories from real people who were in that exact position, struggling financially while waiting for their case to settle. They needed support, and they found it through pre-settlement funding. These stories are based on real cases we've come across in California, Texas, New York, and Florida, but we've changed names and details in order to protect their privacy. The situations, however, are very real, and if you're listening right now, maybe you or someone you love is in the same boat. If so, stick around. You don't want to miss this. Emily's Road to Recovery in California. Our first story takes us to California, where Emily, a dedicated nurse, found herself in a real life-changing situation. Emily spent years caring for others, working long shifts in a busy hospital, but in one single moment, everything changed. One evening, after a long double shift, Emily was on her way home when a distracted driver ran a red light and T-boned her car. The impact was devastating. She suffered multiple fractures, a concussion, and spinal injuries. Her injuries left her unable to work. Her once reliable paycheck was suddenly gone, but her bills, they kept piling up. Rent, medical expenses, physical therapy, it was all adding up fast. Emily knew she had a strong legal case, and her attorney assured her that a fair settlement was coming. But she also knew that legal process would take months, maybe even years. What was she supposed to do in the meantime? She had 2 choices. Either 1, settle early for a fraction of what her case was worth, just to get by financially, or 2, find a way to stay afloat while waiting for the settlement she truly deserved. That's when she discovered pre-settlement funding. With her attorney's help, she applied for an advance through Stonewood Funding. Within 24 hours, Emily had the financial relief she needed. She could pay rent, pay for medical treatment, and breathe a little easier, knowing that she didn't have to rush her case just to survive. And here's the best part. Because she was able to wait, she ultimately won a much higher settlement than the initial lowball offer from the insurance company. Emily's story is proof that financial stability during a lawsuit can make all the difference in getting justice. James fight for justice in Texas. Next, we head to Texas, where James, a construction worker, faced an unimaginable setback. James had spent over a decade working on job sites across Texas. He was proud of the work he did, but one morning, everything changed. While working on a new building project, a scaffolding failure caused him to fall over 20 feet to the ground. The injuries were catastrophic. A broken leg, multiple rib injuries, and a serious back injury. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors told him he would not be able to work for months. James was devastated. Not only was he in incredible pain, but he also knew that without work, he had no way to pay his bills. James had a strong workers' compensation case. But as we all know, insurance companies don't pay out quickly, especially when they think they can stall long enough for you to settle for less. James was weeks away from losing his apartment when his case manager told him about pre-settlement funding. He was skeptical at first because he didn't understand how it worked. But once his attorney explained it, that there was no credit checks, no monthly payments, and no repayment if he lost his case, he realized this was a solution he needed. In just 48 hours, James had funding in his account. It covered his rent, bought groceries for his family, and paid for his physical therapy. He didn't have to have an early settlement, and he didn't have to struggle. When his case finally resolved, he received the full compensation that he deserved. Without pre-settlement funding, James would have lost everything. Instead, he got through this difficult situation with dignity and security. Sophia's business lifelong in New York. Imagine building your own business from the ground up, then almost losing it because of a legal battle. That's exactly what happened to Sophia, a small business owner in New York. After years of hard work, she had built a successful boutique marketing agency. But one day, a client slipped and fell in her office and filed a lawsuit. Suddenly, she was dealing with legal fees, lost business, and an uncertain future. Even though she had business insurance, her attorney warned her this case could take a year or more to settle. She needed to have financial support to keep her business running, but banks wouldn't approve a loan because of the pending lawsuit. Sophia applied for pre-settlement funding, and within days, she had the money she needed to cover her legal fees, keep her business afloat, and continue paying her employees. By the time her case settled, she was able to stay in business and protect her livelihood. All because she didn't have to drain her savings or take a lowball settlement. Our final story today takes us to New Jersey, where Carlos, a hard-working delivery driver, found himself in an impossible situation after a devastating accident. For years, Carlos prided himself on delivery packages across New Jersey's busy streets, navigating the heavy city traffic, tight suburban roads, and unpredictable weather. He worked long hours, making sure customers received their deliveries on time. But one icy winter evening, everything changed. Carlos was on his usual route, dropping off packages in a residential area. As he pulled through an intersection, a commercial truck ran a red light, slammed into his delivery van. The impact flipped his vehicle onto its side. The next thing he knew, he was in an ambulance, being rushed to the hospital with a fractured leg, severe back injuries, and a concussion. Doctors told him he would need multiple surgeries, months of rehabilitation. His injuries were serious enough that he would not be able to return to work for a very long time. Carlos' mind was racing, not about his recovery, but how was he going to survive financially? His biggest fear, he had no savings to fall back on. He was the sole provider for his family. He was already living paycheck to paycheck. His medical bills were piling up. No income was coming in. How was he going to pay rent, groceries, or gas for his wife's car? And on top of that, the trucking company's insurance was dragging out the case, refusing to take responsibility. Carlos felt trapped. He couldn't work, couldn't pay his bills, and couldn't afford to wait for a fair settlement. Just like so many other injury victims, Carlos was starting to consider taking a low-ball settlement offer just to get some quick cash. Then his attorney introduced him to free settlement funding. Pre-settlement funding was a game changer for Carlos. He learned that, unlike a traditional loan, this type of funding didn't require credit checks, employment history, or any kind of repayment unless he won his case. He also found out he could get the funds in as little as 24 to 48 hours. It seemed too good to be true, but it wasn't. With the help of Stonewood Funding, Carlos was able to secure an advance on his expected settlement, and within 48 hours, he had the money he needed to pay his rent, avoid eviction, cover medical expenses that weren't fully covered by insurance, and make sure his family had enough food and basic needs. Most importantly, pre-settlement funding gave Carlos the time and breathing room he needed to wait for a fair settlement, instead of being forced into accepting a low offer from the trucking company's insurance. After 3 months of negotiations, Carlos won his case, receiving a settlement that was nearly 3 times higher than the original offer. Without pre-settlement funding, Carlos would have settled early and walked away with much less. Instead, he got the justice and compensation he truly deserved. Pre-settlement funding changes lives. As you've heard today, pre-settlement funding is more than just money. It's the difference between struggling and surviving. Whether it's helping a nurse recover, a construction worker stay afloat, a small business owner protect their future, or a delivery driver avoid financial ruin. The stories we shared today prove that no one should have to suffer financially while waiting for justice. If you're in the middle of a lawsuit and facing financial hardship, Stonewood Funding is here to help. Visit stonewoodfunding.com to apply today. Thanks for listening.